Good morning, everybody. So we'll kick things off. Our presenters are just arriving. At the Westboro Police Department, we have several specialty assignments. I've talked about this numerous times, that round peg, round hole, trying to find things to keep our officers engaged and providing an enhanced level of service to the community. And one of the specialty units that we have is crime scene services. So these officers are assigned to collect evidence at crime scenes, and they're going to go over different things with you today. And as you know, training is so critical. And is it URI? Yeah. He just finished a course at the University of Rhode Island. That's really one of the premier training programs on the East Coast. So I wanted to share a couple of things, updates with the police department on my end. If you see, we have facial hair in front of you. And every year we do this, we support a different cause. This year it's home base. Home base is with the Boston Red Sox and Mass General Hospital to support veterans. So basically the officers make a donation and we basically grow facial hair for the month of November. So my wife's not too happy with November, but she understands. So that's why you see us with facial hair. The other issue I wanted to talk about, and I'll have Lieutenant Daniels give you a briefing. I talked about last month that Mass Accreditation was coming to the Westboro Police Department to do our assessment because we're trying to become a certified and eventually an accredited agency, best practices in Commonwealth. And we're the first department in Massachusetts with version 6. And version 6 is connected to POST, the Police Officer Standards and Training Requirements. So basically we're kind of a template for the rest of the accredited departments throughout the state. So they had some leadership for Mass Accreditation come out, and I'll have him explain how that went when he's ready to go, which is not yet. So basically we had some assessors come out from different communities and put us through basically inspecting our station, inspecting our policy and procedures. When I initially took over, our policies were from the 80s. So we've rewritten the entire policy and procedural manual. And we were the first department that actually went through the process utilizing our software-powered DMS. So it went very well. We should be certified in February, and we should be accredited, fully accredited in the spring, and that's moving forward. And again, best practices, making sure that what Westboro is doing is on the cutting edge in law enforcement, especially with everything that's happened in recent months. Joe, do you have any updates for anybody?
Hey Chief, can I fill up the time?
Yep.
I want to give you a compliment to the police force, and then there's two questions buried in here. We had my wife was home alone. The workman was finishing up a project at our house. She collapsed.
Yes.
She went inside to call 911. So first question you can get back to at the end is, was she better off to use the landline, which she did, versus a cell phone? But then anyway, so it was officers Turco and Kearney that arrived. They dealt with things and did CPR and the AEDs and the ambulance and everything. But anyway, what she really remarked about was how compassionate they were. She was really shook. They were trying to calm her down. They gave her a phone number to call if she wanted some professional counseling. They then offered there was some blood involved on my driveway. They asked to use our hose and a push broom, and they cleaned it up better than I would have, as she pointed out. And I'm just wondering, is compassion something you can train for the police force, or do you somehow look for people that are compassionate when you do your hiring?
I mean, it is part of it, but what it is, and I said this 1,000 times, we hire extremely hard to hopefully manage it a little easier. So I've given 8 conditional offers to people that after our background investigation, we rescinded those conditional offers because they just weren't the right fit for Westboro. And you're right, we're looking for compassionate, empathetic police officers that when they need to turn the warrior button on, they do. But once it's time, things calm down, they're able to be compassionate people. And a prime example is, and I shared with you this, we had an issue with the fire department. Someone was in crisis, they broke into one of the firefighters' vehicles, they took out this tool that looked like a gun, it was a laser, it was pointing at the dispatchers. And the officers came very close to shooting this person, but one of the officers recognized that it wasn't a firearm. And this is all on body camera. And as soon as they were able to maintain and get this person in custody, to watch them get down on their knees, get down on the same level with this person, and give them, empathetic counseling and treatment to make sure this person was okay, because they were definitely in a mental health crisis. And that's why we have the clinician in the cruiser, and we're able to do follow-up with your wife, and different things like that. And the medical issue that he's dealing with, someone had a heart attack, and because of the generous donation, we received defibrillators. We were able to, utilize that equipment, perform CPR to hopefully try to save the individual's life. But and I say this all the time, we have a fantastic staff, and that's what makes Westboro such a special place. And we hire so hard. We're in the process of hiring now. And I'll tell you, I tell my staff all the time, I will order these folks on before I just put a warm body in the seat. You need to have the right person. I don't want to make a 32-year mistake as a chief, And it's all about, if you hire good people, we can train you to be a good police officer. But if you're not a good person, I can't change that. I can't. So that's what we're all about. And it's, like I said, it's not that I'm saying these conditional officers, they weren't good people. They just weren't the right fit for Westboro. We're looking for a person that is exactly, those two people that you talk about, those are my hires. That's who we hire. We've hired 27 people. Promoted 14, and it's been a very rigorous process, and I'm very proud of that. So without further ado, because I explained accreditation, unless you have something else you want to talk about?
I didn't even hear it.
So, it's like a Charlie Brown Christmas special, just tune me out. So I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Daniels. He may be a little redundant, but just to explain what we went through, because honestly, Lieutenant Daniels and Sergeant Shipperette, they've been leading the charge on accreditation. It has been so much work, and Lieutenant Daniels wrote a grant for almost $17,000 to help offset some of the costs. So we're real proud of that. Those are the initiatives and things that we're doing here to kind of. And you got a question?
His question about is the cell phone better than
whatever's closest.
Cell phone.
Whatever you have at your disposal, 911, because now these calls can be transferred, right to us. So if you have your cell phone in your hand, dial 911. Whatever's the closest means to get us there as soon as possible, because seconds do matter.
Good morning, everyone. Lieutenant Mike Daniels, I've been here on numerous occasions, and you've heard me talk about our accreditation process. And really, I'm not going to take up too much of your time because I want you to, experience our guests fully. They have some interesting topics to cover. But accreditation really just means, it provides us with a professional stamp saying that this agency, Westboro Police Department, has gone through a rigorous testing of their policies and procedures. Not just our policies and procedures, but our facilities. So areas of high liability, the biggest areas of liability for any police department comes from lack of policy, lack of accountability, holding facilities, and how we handle evidence. So we have a group of independent auditors that come in, or assessors that come in, to really look at how we do things in the police department. And I think I overheard the chief mention 6th edition. That doesn't really mean a whole lot to anyone that doesn't really know what accreditation is. But the reason why it's important to note that the 6th edition certification or accreditation that we're going to receive, why it's important to note that is because it's going to be the first certification issued from the state that shows that Westboro Police Department is compliant with all police officer standards and training guidelines. So that's huge. Basically, it just gives us that stamp. And then that's pretty much it. Right now, Sergeant Shipperette and I are working on the second phase, which is full accreditation, which is a more rigorous testing process. A lot of the standards that we have to meet are applicable to some of the federal standards that some of your larger city departments that are accredited have to follow. So we're trying to tackle that project now. We're probably about 80% through. But the initial assessment was very positive. We had very, very minor, what they call repair work, and it had to do with wording on the policy. So that just goes to show you, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of policies that we had to go through to revamp and fit them to Westboro Police Department, also have them vetted to make sure that they're, fair and equitable. So, yeah,
What was the
Chief, you
com-
have a question?
What
Go
was
ahead.
the comment by the Lawrence lieutenant?
So, when we had our assessment, they had 4 assessors. One of them was the director that came in to make sure everything was going smoothly. There's a lieutenant from Lawrence PD, which is a much larger city police department. His words exactly are, your agency is squared away. So if any of you have been in the military, you know what the word squared away means. That means that you're very sharp, progressive, and he was really looking at all the same policies that we've been looking at for the last 4 years and trying to, make sure that they were ironclad. He went through our building, all of them went through our building, and they were impressed by the facilities, the way that the officers conducted themselves, our equipment. They look through our police cars, they make sure that they're properly stocked with everything. They check to make sure that the lights are functioning. And unfortunately, a lot of police departments across the Commonwealth don't have the same resources that Westboro Police Department has that you guys have provided to us. So we're able to do that and demonstrate that we're cutting edge and we're progressive, and that came through in our assessment reports. So the chief said that we'll achieve certification probably around February, and I'm 100% confident in that because the director, when she was there, she had put us in for accelerated accreditation, meaning that everything that they saw up until that point was ironclad with some minor changes, and they wanted to push us through to accreditation. These processes usually take about 4 years, especially when they change new additions. We were able to complete it in less time than most police departments, but that's because we were already there. We have the resources. So thank you, everyone, for all the taxpayers that support us. I mean, it's important, and I think it's important for us to really talk about it so that you guys know what your tax money is doing for the Westboro Police Department.
In the spirit of full transparency, once this process is done, we're going to be putting a lot of our policies right on our website, so you'll be able to see, the policies that we're working under. And those policies will change as we are mandated to make changes through POST, the Police Officer Standards and Training Commission.
So I'll give you a quick example of what the chief is talking about. So you know that we initiated a body-worn camera initiative, right? So we weren't the first agency in the Commonwealth to have body-worn cameras. So basically what was happening was a lot of agencies were able to, before POST came out and before they reached accreditation, they were able to implement a body-worn camera program, but then kind of tweak the policy the way that they wanted it without a check and balance. But now POST has come out with some regulations that were made, or recommendations that were made by the Body Camera Subcommittee, along with the Accreditation Commission. So now they're saying, they're dictating, hey, this is what you need to, you have to have this in your policy. If you don't have this in your policy, and this is from you people, this is from the citizens, saying this is what we want in policy, in the law, to govern how our police officers operate their equipment. So they put that into the accreditation standard. So now we have to meet that standard. We're already compliant with it. They just haven't vetted it. So that's another thing. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but these guys are far more interesting than the chief and I. So even the chief just said you guys are. So whatever. So I'm going to bring forward Eric Dyson and Officer Thomas Tepper. Both are crime scene techs for the Westboro Police Department.
How are you guys? Good morning. Good morning. So my name is Eric Dyson. I transferred over here to the Westboro Police Department about 3.5 years ago, and I came from West Brookfield Police Department, so I worked there for 2 years. I'm currently been on this unit for about 1.5 years. It's a pretty fun unit. This is Thomas Tepper. Tepper came over here about 2 years ago. He's been on the unit just as long as I have. So Chief just wanted us to come, just kind of quickly whip this up so I can show you guys exactly what we do and who's a part of the unit and stuff like that. I got some videos for you, and then afterwards I can show you some, we can make some stuff so you guys can hold it in your hand and see a fingerprint in your hand and stuff. So the crime scene unit is made up of 5 individuals right now.
Thank you.
Supervisor is Detective Sergeant Josh Croft, and then Sergeant Christopher Achu, Sergeant Gregory McRae, myself, and Tom Teppa. So the responsibilities of a crime scene investigator were to identify and collect and preserve any evidence of a crime scene. We do residential break-in enterings, commercial break-in enterings, sexual assaults, robberies, bank robberies, armed robberies, and any serious or fatal motor vehicle crashes. That's more now. We have a crash recon team. Lieutenant Luce, he's a part of that, but sometimes we'll take photographs for him as well. So what our job as a crime scene investigator is to detect, collect, document, preserve any trace of evidence, glove prints, hairs, etc. We also do DNA. We'll do evidence with DNA that's left from any type of attacker, victim, any weapons used, any piece of evidence, etc. A latent fingerprint, we're just to look up for an impression that's left. We're looking for friction-rich detail, which is, I'm going to go over that in a moment, but sweat glands, which you'll see in a moment. I got a couple of videos. So these are the 3 most common fingerprints. These are actually the only fingerprints. The one that's least common is the arch pattern. It's only 6% of people in the world have that. So each fingerprint, so we have whirl, pattern, we have loop, and arch. Those are the 3 fingerprints that we're looking for. So the fingerprints is the eccrine glands. This is what causes the sweat glands. Your palms, the soles of your feet. A fingerprint is made up of 98% of water, and then 2% is the water, salts, fats, proteins, and amino acids. I'm going to try to see if this video works. We'll see what happens. The video basically just shows just shows how your fingerprints and your feet sweat. It's kind of cool.
So while he's trying to get that to work, any questions so far? No questions? All right.
Yeah, I got one for you.
Go ahead.
What can I do to a crime scene to eradicate it?
Well,
Just
we'll
curious.
go over that.
Just curious.
So we'll go over that in a few moments, but one of the main ways of ruining evidence is just by simply walking into the scene and touching or moving, rubbing, anything like that. This evidence is very fragile, and if it's exposed to elements or any kind of contact, it can be ruined, and that makes our jobs a lot harder. So we'll discuss that.
You need to take his picture.
Yeah.
So can you guys see this okay? Yeah. So I'm going to play this video again, and you're going to see how the individual sweats are coming up from the eccrine glands. Okay? This is what causes a fingerprint. It's nothing crazy, but it just shows on how a fingerprint can focus sweat. And when someone gets, you're real nervous and stuff like that, you're gonna sweat. All right, if you touch something and it causes a fingerprint, that's what we're looking for when we're at your residences or any kind of break.
All right. So as you can see here, folks, there's 3 main types of fingerprints. There's latent prints, patent fingerprints, plastic fingerprints. I think we have some pictures demonstrating those. So this is an example of a latent fingerprint. This is what would be
most commonly see and find on a crime scene. Those are typically things that you can't see right away, but after exposing them to some chemicals and powders, things like that, we can produce that image and then photograph it and submit it to a lab for analysis. Patent fingerprints, these are fingerprints. As you can see, this was left after there was some sort of other material, in this case I believe blood, transferred onto the fingerprint and then left a mark on a surface. Not sure what the surface is, but it looks like some sort of plastic. And plastic fingerprint. This is a unique case that Officer Dyson is familiar with, but someone broke into a house, I believe, touched some Play-Doh, discarded that Play-Doh, and the very clever detective or investigator on scene decided to pick it up and was able to get a fingerprint off that and subsequently located who it was. They were charged and put in jail. So it's important to never overlook or discredit things. At a crime scene, anything can have or leave evidence on it, whether it's DNA, fingerprints. There's almost no end to the possibilities. Surfaces for latent fingerprints, two main types: porous surfaces, non-porous surfaces. Those include things like a porous material would be anything like wood, things like that. Non-porous would be metals, plastics, things that can't absorb any kind of liquid. I went ahead of the slide. Porous surfaces, again, paper, untreated wood, cardboard, sponge, and fabric. Non-porous surfaces, as I said, include glass, plastic, metals, and varnished woods. The process for developing latent prints, three general techniques for making latent prints visible: mechanical, the physical attachment to fingerprint residue, chemical reaction between components of fingerprint residue and applied chemicals, instrumental luminescence, the use of light sources, which we use quite frequently. The mechanical techniques for fingerprint development: powder and brush, traditional powders, magnetic powders, fluorescent powders, adhesive side powders, and small particle reagents. We actually have some of these here in our kits today. We'll be able to demonstrate some of that for you, see what it looks like and how it works. Chemical techniques for fingerprint development: iodine fuming, involves natural body fats and oils. Ninhydrin reacts with the amino acids. There you can see the two examples of.
Your media on. You will not be on the recorded video, so don't worry about the private concern. And you only record time.
I'm not sure who that ghost is, but we'll ignore him.
I don't know what that is either. I don't care. So, without further ado.
All right, moving on. So this is very similar to the device that we have in our CSU lab downstairs. It's essentially an airtight chamber that we lock our evidence into. We hang them in a, let's see if we get this to work. We make sure to hang them like this so all sides of everything are exposed. Inside there's a little humidifier that usually sits on the bottom, and a little container that we put some super glue onto, which is then heated, and that creates a reaction where it solidifies those oils and water that Officer Dyson was talking about onto whatever the surface is, and that allows for easier exposure after the items are removed from the chamber.
It also preserves the fingerprint. So once you use this in the machine, that will hold that fingerprint for a long period of time, longer than what it would have done if we just left it as is.
So the cyanoacrylate fuming chamber, think I pronounced that right, which is the chamber that you just saw pictured. It uses super glue for forensic science technique that uses vapors of the super glue to develop latent prints. The latent fingerprint is a fingerprint left on the surface as a result of the oils, respiration from the pores in hands and fingers. Fuming is performed in a developed chamber using super glue and water, which allows the vapors to adhere to the fingerprint, making the fingerprint visible. And this is ideally the result that you want to see after exposing a surface to the fuming chamber.
So these are some examples of a crime scene. Officer Teppa and I, we have open cases, so I was unable to put any of my cases. We're pretty new to the unit. So my father, he was a detective for 33 years, well, 18 years. He was a police officer for 33 years in Auburn. So I reached out to him and I got some crime scene photographs for you guys to kind of see what an investigator will do at the crime scene, okay? So it's kind of hard to see, but these are blood spatter. So I believe this was a stabbing case. Strike that. No, this is a beating. So go to the next page. This shows on the importance of securing a crime scene. So this homeowner didn't go into his house. This is very hard to see to a normal eye. So if you walk in, you could step on this, and the evidence could get ruined. So another case. This was a stabbing. This was at the Auburn Mall. So all right here is blood spatter. He was stabbed in the neck. So in his vehicle, he was stabbed. So these are all traces, evidence that we look for. So when we do crime scene investigations, we also do diagrams. So this is a diagram that they did for the stabbing. So with crime scene investigators, we use this diagram. It's called total station. I haven't brought this up to my supervisors yet, but this is something that we're looking to possibly get to do sketches, just assist us with sketches. For example, you take a photograph of the item or weapon, and it draws it for you. So it kind of, you want to paint that picture in court. This is a three-dimensional foot impression. So this is actually a foot impression in the dirt, but the way we're able to capture the photograph, it makes it 3D. So it pops out of the ground in a way. This is a fingerprint that was fumed in that chamber that Officer Teppa talked about. These are pry marks for a beanie. Someone used to forcibly enter into a residence. So these are some databases that we use. If we are able to recover and obtain a fingerprint, if an individual that has broken into your residence has been arrested or has done any kind of felony or anything like that, or if they're in the system whatsoever, it's called APHIS. So if we get a pretty good print, we'll be able to get a hit off with the APHIS machine. The other one is the CODIS. So CODIS is for like DNA. So if we, mostly felons, if they get convicted, they have to give a DNA sample at the jail. So if they leave any type of blood, any type of DNA whatsoever at your residence, and we are able to swab it, and we get enough on the swab, they'll also get hit in the CODIS system. And then SITCA is shoe print identification. The state police uses it. They usually only use it for like any kind of serious crimes. If you have a connection, you might be able to get a shoe impression in there, but that's mostly for the state police and the serious crimes that they use. So this is the importance, this is what officers will do when they respond to a crime scene. Mostly, first officers summons their uniform officers. They'll check the immediate area in the interior of the business or residence for potential suspects. They also canvass the neighborhood or gather intelligence in an attempt to identify the suspects. Supervisors will determine if a crime scene or investigator is needed to respond to the scene, and then a detailed report on the crime scene is forwarded to usually our DVs. This video, I'm gonna have you watch this video. I hope you can hear it. In this video, it's a convicted felon who now is speaking with some newscaster, but he talks about who he victimized. He usually targeted the elder and how he did it. So these are just signs you can pick up on, especially like locking all your windows, keeping your doors shut. They go at the rear of your residence and stuff like that. So we're going to try to play this and hope you can hear it.
The thing that's different about a Virgo vacation home, you always have the whole place to yourself. Most true.
I don't want to go to the window. Anyways, what I prefer that, you always go through that, most people are going to leave their bathroom window open, if any window is going to be open. The bathroom window. The bathroom window, because that's where the steam is coming up in the showers. That's where, if you really think about how many people do open that window and they just forget about it, or they just don't lock it. So bathroom windows have always been one of the best ways. A lot of people won't put their boards in their sliding doors or in their windows, or they leave that sliding door in the back open because it's in their backyard, and they think that, who's going to really come back here? Especially if they have a fence, which, if they got a fence, 6-foot fence, that's a great thing for me. Because you can hide? Yeah. People aren't going to be able to really see unless they're upstairs in their second-story house looking down. Yeah. What's the best time to break into a house? It depends. Sometimes, I don't think night is really a great time. Daytime, because there's always a lot going on. But you want to actually check what's going on in the neighborhood too. Like that neighborhood we just passed, and there was 2 vans in front of that one house that's for sale. You got 2 vans, so you got people working around there. So there's going to be people that can see you doing stuff. So, but like this, where it's just a nice quiet neighborhood, you kind of look around and you can probably find stuff really quick. So yeah, early evening if you're going to do anything. Nighttime is just too many chances of somebody being home, What are you typically looking for if you're going to break into a house? I'm looking for jewelry. I'm looking for cash. I'm looking for things like that. Like you were saying, guns. If you can get guns, they're easy to sell. Anything that's going to be easier to sell, it's not really big to have to take out. But even now, it used to be everybody had big TVs. Now you can get a TV this big and throw it in a van or a car, whatever you're in. So like this neighborhood right here, I wouldn't even go near, just because, you got too many people. You got somebody here, you got somebody here. You got 3 people down 3 people outside, a lot of activity. Yeah, I'm not even going to walk down the street. I'm going to go the other way just because I don't even want to be noticed at that point. So a lot of times walking around, would you pretend to be somebody or just...
So just the beginning of that video just shows on what and how they targeted, how they go through the back. They look for, sometimes they even watch you, certain people leave. Just like this recent one we just had, they were gone for 20 minutes. Next thing you know, house is getting broken into. So, say if you go home to your residence right now, and you see this, what do? Okay, so, you basically do nothing. You just go out, you stay outside, do not go inside, call the Westboro Police Department. The suspect could be still inside, and you also may destroy potential evidence or forensic evidence. So in this photograph, do you guys see any potential evidence right here? What do you see?
Items thrown on the floor.
What else? So this is, again, one of my father's cases. He found a shoe impression in the dust, which if most people just went into the house, that could be wrecked, you know, and that's a way he actually solved this case, was through the shoe impression. This is just an example with that sick car. He had a connection up in the state police database for sick car. They gave him what they believe to be the shoe. They actually have they have a guy up there that he's like a shoe expert or something. He just hangs out with shoes. So he gave him the shoe, and I believe there was a gentleman that they kept locking up who had the same shoe, so they become suspects. And then this just shows what the guy at the Mass State Police who does the shoes, what he looks for. Everyone walks differently. There's always some type of fading. Someone walks with the outside of their shoe. So this just shows on how they kind of identify whatever shoe it is. That's basically it. You guys have any questions for me?
So I just wanted to add, because I have to get back to the station. Officer Dyson, I was his dad's supervisor. We worked together in the detective bureau for years. One of the best crime scene technicians probably in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So one of the reasons why he's his father's son. And he does a great job with it. And I can tell you, Officer Tepper is a very, very talented artist. And I went to Officer Tepper and I said, your attention to detail is unbelievable, and I think you were born to be a crime scene technician. And this is something that I did for many, many years, probably 20 years of my career, crime scene investigation and detective bureau. So I just want to say you've got two fantastic officers here that are going to make sure that you're not victimized twice. And there's one story I'd like to share. When I was the police chief in Uxbridge, we had a house break, and I detected evidence, blood evidence, fingerprint evidence, and the officer was going to leave. And I said, where are you going? And he says, well, I'm going to go back to the station and do the report. I said, the bad guy's still here. He goes, where? There goes, blood evidence is on the windowsill. He took his rubber gloves off. We're going to swab that inside of it to collect DNA. There's fingerprint evidence. So what I did was I cycled everyone through that department that was interested in crime scene, and I found a couple of people, and we were able to collect evidence at that scene utilizing another premier detective, Gary Wood from Charlton, who collected evidence, and we solved that B&E. So it's about making sure that you're not victimized twice, that we're going to do everything in our power as police officers to make sure you have closure. We're going to utilize the pawn database. We're going to try to get your jewelry back, your items back as humanly possible. But we want you to have some closure. There's no one, your home is your sanctum. That is where you feel safe. And if you've ever been victimized of a house break, you know how devastating that is. Someone came into your place where you sleep every night, and we will not stand for that. We treat every house break, every business break extremely seriously, and we want to make sure we bring people, help people accountable. We had a B&E 2 days ago. The suspect was on the doorbell cam. And the resident was very happy with us because of the level of service that we're providing, and hopefully we will solve that case as well. So I just wanted to kind of give them a little bit of kudos, because these are the people, I tell you folks, that are going to make sure you receive nothing more than the best level of services we can provide. And the lieutenant and I, as supervisors, Officer Sabati, and these two fine gentlemen, we're going to make sure we're going to do everything we can, and that's why we do, as Lieutenant Daniel says, thank you for your support, because we're able to provide training. The training that he received was over $3,000 to attend that college. But that's invaluable, because he's collecting evidence at a higher level than a lot of people out there, and that's what we're all about in Westboro.
I got a question. I just want to know, you spoke about you're going to have a little talk with, that sounds like a gospel song, going to have a little talk with Jesus. You're going to have a little talk with the chief about a piece of equipment. What is it?
So it's the, I can't think of what it was. It's basically a sketching equipment
Right.
that will help us with, so we don't do sketches on every single crime scene, but if you have like an armed robbery, a serious crime, you're going to want to do a sketch.
Right.
So we're still working out the basis. This is still like new.
So what's it cost?
I don't know yet.
You need to find that out.
I will.
You're looking at an active audience.
I know.
You never know.
Too much, but they're-
I'll figure that out though.
You never know. Mad at our kids, we'll leave it to you.
That's it. Yeah. So, well, with that case that Chief was just talking about that happened 2 days ago, I was there for at least 6 hours, and I was actually able to find 2 fingerprints on the doorknob.
Wow.
So knowing that it was the interior of the doorknob, knowing it could possibly be the homeowners, we'll do elimination prints, and then the lab, we'll send it to the lab, and the lab will figure that out from there.
I know sometimes you get grants and things, but
Yeah,
I'm
I mean-
really curious about that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like,
Saves time.
I mean, but Officer Teppa can like draw his own things. It's crazy. So
Not everybody can draw.
not everyone can draw. I cannot draw. So.
Well, thank you very much.
What lab do you send your information to?
So we use 2 labs. One is the latent print unit in Worcester. That's for the fingerprints. Any type of DNA and stuff like that we'll send to the Sudbury State Police laboratory.
I've seen the evidence from downstairs at the police department. Can you tell us about some of the unusual equipment that's inside and the purpose of those doors that are in the hallway
Which doors?
that go into the evidence room? There's like little, like refrigerator doors.
Oh, so that's the fuming that we that photograph that we showed. It's not exactly what our fuming looks like, but that's what if you walk in right to the right, that was the fumer station. So that's when we put like anything that's plastic or shiny, and we try to fume a print onto that, and then process it, and try to lift it.
I think, sir, what you're referring to is the, in the hallway, there's the beige colored doors that are kind of sectioned off.
like
There's
lockers.
different- Yeah, those are evidence lockers where we store evidence that needs to be processed or any evidence that is withdrawn from a crime scene. They usually go down there. And then there is one, thank you. There is one locker that is dedicated to things that need to be refrigerated. Any evidence that is perishable if left out in warm conditions, obviously we want to make sure that it stays preserved. So we do have a refrigerator dedicated for that type of evidence.
When you put those numbers out for evidence, is there any order of sequence, or is it just total points of evidence?
Yeah, so there is a sequence to everything we do. Everything we do is documented and systematically processed so that we can keep track of everything. So when we go to court, we can have essentially, it's like reading a book. You have the beginning of a book, the middle of a book, and the end of a book.
So number 1 versus number 4
Yep.
or 5?
So it'll
mean
typically
something?
Yep. So how it'll happen is typically we'll find one piece of evidence, we'll label that 1. We find another piece of evidence, we'll label it 2. And then, depending how big your crime scene is too, you can have all your evidence in one area, or you can have a bunch of evidence scattered across a large area. Sort of like one of the images that Officer Dyson showed you outside. But everything has a purpose, everything has a meaning. I think you're referring to also some of the little tabs, the little.
Yeah,
those
does
are
number 1 mean that was laid down first versus number 4, or it has no reference? in that area?
It depends on the officer. So you could, some officers will do, or crime scene techs will do, is whatever they see first, they put down.
Oh, okay.
Some would go, they'll follow the blood spatter on how, they'll follow the blood spatter on which way. Because you can tell, like, if you're walking in a certain way, when you're blood, if you're bleeding profusely, the blood will splat, and it'll cause a tail, which will show the direction on which the individual or suspect or victim went.
You could also kind of illustrate how fast somebody was walking, like Officer Dyson said, how much blood was coming out. All that could be kind of displayed through all that evidence.
I watch a lot of a true crime network, I don't know if you know that, on TV, and 2020 and Frontline and all that, all these crime scenes that are investigated and with a dramatic presentation. And fundamentally, I have this observation that your work is not, how do I put it, definitive in terms of solving a crime. It's about arrest, prosecution, conviction. Now, am I to understand, or could I understand, that the Westboro Police Department is trying to enhance and improve the crime scene investigation so that you can produce enough evidence, whether circumstantial or witness evidence, so that you can influence the district attorney to prosecute a crime, so that he doesn't say, I can't go forward with this, there's not enough real evidence, I can't get a conviction. And I'm sure you're well aware if the district attorney can't get a conviction, he doesn't care how much evidence you produced. And if you can't get a conviction, then you don't, in fact, apprehend and remove the perpetrator from the general population. So are you trying to actually produce a team that is capable of getting enough evidence to result in a prosecution versus you get some evidence, but it's not going to go anywhere in terms of an arrest and a prosecution?
So all evidence until otherwise the laboratory tells you differently, I'm going to take everything.
No, I know you're going to take it, but it has to be definitive enough so that you can, in fact, so that the attorney, I mean, you take your evidence to the legal entities that ask for a subpoena and things like that. What is it? What is it when you go in front of a grand jury? What do you get in front of a grand jury?
Grand jury's court.
When they go and present evidence to grand jury to get a conviction, it's not a conviction, it's a
Indictment.
an indictment or something like that. Yeah, it's like there's a phrase, you can indict a hot dog in front of a grand jury. It's very easy, but then you got to get a conviction. Are you trying to get enough evidence so that the district attorneys will, for the Commonwealth or for the various counties, will go forward with a prosecution versus there isn't enough evidence for us to go forward with this prosecution, and we'll just put it in a cold case file, which I'm sure you've heard about, where cases sit for decades almost.
That all depends on the circumstance. If we have enough evidence, there's, like you described, there's different types of evidence. There's definitive evidence, there's circumstantial evidence. All that plays a factor. And we gather everything we possibly can, and that doesn't just include CSU, that includes any patrol officer. They're going to do and investigate everything accordingly to get as much evidence as they possibly can. When they come to a standstill there, they will implement the detectives who will then search for more evidence. And then we will just keep gathering evidence as much as we can, and once we get a suspect, or if we already have a suspect, we'll file charges and present a case.
So I don't get the sense that your unit does the interrogation, which is the definitive, could be the definitive mechanism for getting enough evidence to go forward with prosecution.
So what our unit does is we collect and preserve any evidence at the scene.
Yeah.
The Detective Bureau will go do interviews for witnesses, potential suspects, interrogations, etc. So our sole job is to go down there and try to find and put someone who the detectives believe in that residence.
Have you ever done a murder scene?
State police, only state police do those. In the Massachusetts, they take over for.
I got one other quick question. I have a couple of dogs. I think they're a deterrent to a break-in because my dogs will alert under any circumstance. They'll alert me approaching my own house, God forbid somebody else. Do you find people with dogs have less break-ins? Dogs with big mouths.
I mean, so there's a couple of in the slideshows. I took some of it out, but there was one where a guy, he watched an elderly woman leave. She was gone for 20 minutes. She had a big dog. He didn't care. He forcefully entered her house and he broke off it was like a piece of the door, but the dog was in fear of the guy. So it depends though. I mean, some dogs are too friendly. Some dogs aren't friendly, so it depends on the dog, I guess.
What about deadbolt locks?
Deadbolt locks?
Yeah, I find that's much better than the dog.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but sometimes they'll forcibly break into the residence, so it depends on everything. There's so many scenarios we could talk about.
Yeah, there is. It's a science into itself.
Yes.
I used to teach forensics about maybe 15 or 20 years ago, and you said something that had me fascinated. You found fingerprints on the inside doorknob. How did you find them? And did you have to lift them in order to identify them?
Yeah, so after everything's said and done here for the presentation, I'm going to make some fingerprints with some black powder or gray powder. And then I'll show you how we lift them too. But so I ask a lot of questions when I get on scene. I'll ask, I want to see video and stuff like that. If I see in that video, and from what I was told, the guy smashed the window most recently, pulled out the window, reached and unlocked it. So I focused my attention there, which I was able to get a partial print. And I did lift it. I got 2 prints from the door.
Must be tough. It's hard to do.
It's very hard to do. Usually, to be honest with you, those are my first 2 lifts. Usually I fail at them, so. But we'll show you guys after.
How much do your fingerprints change as you get older?
They never change.
So even though you look at them and then you don't
Yep.
have shrivel or whatever?
Yep.
The only thing that would make a difference is, in terms of leaving a fingerprint behind, is how clean your hands are and your diet. And how the conditions. If you have really dry hands, they're prone to leave less of a fingerprint impression. If you have really sweaty hands, they'll leave a nice, big, juicy one. So those are the only really differences or variations in your fingerprint throughout your life.
If you, after you eat dinner, if you go, or breakfast, if you go and wash your hands right now and dry them, you can touch whatever you want and it'll not find a fingerprint. You washed everything off, the hands are dry. It's if you touch your hair, if you touch your face, you're leaving sweat glands. So right now I just left something on that table. So it's something like that.
So even though they're worn down?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
No.
I'm not going to do anything. I promise.
Anything else?
How much of a problem is there with breaking and entering here in town?
It comes in waves. Most of these are. It depends on the structure. So you have motor vehicles. Motor vehicles are typically, I think Officer Dyson will agree, most people who hit motor vehicles they're opportunistic kind of thieves. They'll walk by, they see a purse or a computer, door's unlocked, open the door, grab the stuff, they're out of there. Not very often do we get people actually breaking into a car, shattering the glass and reaching in for something. Not uncommon, but not good for an opportunistic kind of criminal, right? And then you have other people who break into homes who are, like the video showed, they're a little bit more educated, they know what they're looking for, they do their research, and it all depends on the neighborhood and the people who live there. If something that I've noticed is
people who advertise that they're going to be going away on social media, you know, hey, we're going to Disney World for 2 weeks or whatever like that, that information gets out and gets around. Unfortunately, some of these people also neglected to lock one window or two windows, and that was all it took. You know, that kind of simple information that gets around. Someone comes over, notices a window is open, they can make entry completely undetected. So that will kind of influence the frequency and I think exposing opportunity to criminals anywhere.
How are we doing with the grab and goes? And I don't mean our lunches here. I'm talking, I know how we're doing that.
In our town, we have, our agency's actually very proactive on Route 9, so we won't. It's kind of funny, you'll see like Shrewsbury get hit, and then Southbrook get hit, but we won't get hit.
And I'm mostly referring to, are we on the same page? I'm referring
A smash and grab like at a convenience store?
No, actually, I think of Shrewsbury and Worcester on that. I know you've had them in the past, but I'm mostly mean the grab and goes like from your doorsteps. You know,
packages, yeah.
Crime and all those that, yeah, you happen to see them throw them on the front door. And so I'm just kind of curious how we're doing with that, yes.
I'm gonna be honest with you, I haven't done one in a while, because we're on patrol as well, so we're just on this unit, and I haven't.
Two jobs.
Yeah, I haven't done a case for that
That's okay.
in a while.
However, again, with, like I mentioned earlier, this time of the year, there's gonna be more packages.
That's why I mentioned it.
Yeah, so.
I would just try to make sure that you're home when your package is there, bring them inside. Don't leave anything out that makes someone be like very interested in your residence and stuff like that, you know? But the one thing, if you take anything out of this, it's very imperative that if you do go home and you see something smashed or you see something, do not go in your house, go in your car and just call us.
Even if you're unsure, if you're not sure, you come home and you're like, something doesn't look right here, it's out of place, just give us a call. It takes 2 minutes for us to come out, we'll look around, make sure everything's fine, make sure all your windows and doors are locked, gives you peace of mind, and you know, we can verify nothing happened. And if something did, we're already there, and we can respond a little bit better.
I have one last question. Are you suggesting that the criminals in Westboro are too stupid to put on plastic gloves before they break into a house? I mean, that's fundamental.
No, I mean, I've done a couple of crime scenes now where you could tell that, yes, I got an outline of a fingerprint, but they were wearing gloves.
You wear surgical gloves, you ain't leaving fingerprints.
No, but you know, you might leave something else. You might leave a piece of hair. You might leave, you know, sweat. You might leave spit. You know, maybe I'll call for a canine and fall and see which way he went. Maybe he threw his gloves out in the woods. So, and then I can get swabbed for DNA. So it all depends on what, each scenario is different. So.
Yes, it is, yes.
When you call 911, that goes to the state police and then they get in touch with you on a cell phone?
I think it might, depending on your location, if it's with a cell phone, it might just directly route you to whatever the closest department is, I think.
If you hear a 911 operator say, 911 emergency, just be like, I'm looking for Westboro Police Department. They'll either say, this is us, or they'll transfer you down.
I'm going to tell you about an incident. This is not in the state of Massachusetts. My cousin was at the front of her house. She was breaking leaves in the fall. She went into her house, after the back door, and everything else, and that's when they noticed, she noticed, she was robbed, and she was right in the front of her house. She was robbed. They stole all the gold jewelry and some money. They stole the kid's bank that was a tall plastic thing that you put money in. They stole that and everything else. On the second floor of her house, a police officer lived there. But they robbed the downstairs of her house and never caught the guy. No. Nope, they never caught the guy. They found some stuff about 3 houses down under a porch and everything. But they never caught the guy. And she was right in the front of her house.
Yep. So again,
and he went out the back.
That's probably someone who was familiar with her, or again, doing their research, knowing how many people are home, where they are.
But this was years ago. Yeah, in New Hampshire. And a police officer on top of all that.
Just
odd question.
And it was.
In your investigations, are you finding over the last few years more crime scenes in single-family homes or in apartment condo, multi-unit buildings? Where does it seem that, is there a?
I would say for residential, it's just a normal ranch house.
Single-family home.
Single-family home. And then we also are getting commercial break-in enterings.
He's asking
So like large condominium apartment buildings, not so much?
I mean,
occasionally.
It's occasion, depends.
But not as much as the other locations?
It depends on, yeah, it depends, because we have so many apartment complexes, so it's
That's
kind of
why,
hard
yeah.
to say.
That's why I asked the question.
But I would say that I've gone to a lot more single-family homes.
Depends how bad they want to get into whatever they're looking for, you know?
Because most of these apartment complexes are locked from even entering them.
Right.
So it's hard for people to go into an apartment complex in Westboro. Because even us, we're always like, I don't know what the code is. We have to figure out the code, or we have them all at dispatch, so many codes that we have to remember. So it's very hard for a apartment complex, but it has happened.
Well, don't most of them have those knock boxes?
Yeah, but the fire department has the key to that, so we don't have the key for it. But a lot of like Homestead Boulevard, all those, we have codes that they provide the police, so we can get in there. So, I mean, if I have to get in there right away, I just break the window, but it is what it is. Anything else?
Just like to thank you both for coming and sharing everything.
Glad to do it, thank you.
Just remember, I don't care if you're not sure, I don't care if it might sound stupid, I want you to call the police, I want us to look at your house to make sure that you're safe.
So if you're really suspicious of something, make the call.
Yes.
Don't ever think you're wasting our time. This is what we do, this is why we're here. It's our job.
And the way that we investigate stuff, you know, it could be my grandmother, my mother, my father, I'm gonna give you 110%. I'm gonna make sure that, I wanna make sure that you're safe, I wanna make sure you feel safe, and I'm gonna try to find who did it to you.
I think the people who live in Westboro are very appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.